The committee is resumed. Kia ora tātou no reira te whare, inga iwi, inga rio, inga hawe wha tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Honourable members, prior to the dinner break at 6 p.m, the Honourable Member Sue Moroney was speaking and has 1 minute and 10 seconds remaining to address the House. I invite the member to seek the call on the Smoke-Free Environments Controls and Enforcement Amendment Bill. I call the Honourable Member Sue Moroney.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. And with the benefit of having a dinner break, and I just want to say how important dinner breaks are for many, many reasons, but also for reflection upon a speech that one might have been making just prior to 6 o'clock when we broke on this part one of this particular bill. And I got a little bit over-enthusiastic, Mr Chair, in my enthusiasm for praising the Select Committee about how wise they had been with regard to herbal products. And I was saying that they had actually banned the display. And I've reflected on that over the dinner break and have discovered that they did all sorts of good things about regulating herbal products, but unfortunately did not go as far as banning the display of herbal products. And I think that now that we've learned and we've had a debate about chronic, and that it in fact actually fits exactly that criteria, perhaps that is something that we should be considering in these committee stages about taking that extra step of banning the display of herbal products as well, because of course chronic would fall fairly and squarely into that category. And I think it's clear to us now that that particular product, be it herbal or not, is at least as harmful as cigarettes or tobacco products, and ought to be included as well. Nonetheless, the Select Committee had in this part of the bill, Mr Chair.
I call the Honourable Member Sue Moroney.
Thank you, Mr Chair. The Select Committee in this particular part of the bill had another tricky issue to deal with, and that was the tricky issue about how to try and regulate the internet. And I think that's an issue that's vexed this Parliament on more than one occasion, and particularly recently it's been quite vexing for this Parliament, because how do we regulate and seek to have some standards and control over something that has a life of its own, like the internet? And so the Select Committee was called to consider this again with regard to the promotion of tobacco products and also herbal products as well. And of course it's almost impossible to actually ban the display of those products on the internet. But I think what the Select Committee has quite wisely done is that they have particularly tried to prohibit what is in fact allowable in terms of the internet, and particularly some of the health benefits that can be used on the internet to promote particular products, and so the Select Committee and this bill has sought to address that particular issue, and it's a very tricky one indeed. Mr Chair, I think it's often said when we talk about this issue about smoke-free environments that there is it's like, I guess, a woman scorned, really, isn't it? People who used to smoke can sometimes be the most vociferous in terms of defending and promoting strong regulation around tobacco products. And I put myself in that camp. I am a former smoker. It feels like making a big confession. But I think that as a former smoker, and I won't say I gave it up, because to give it up would imply that I've given up something valuable. It's not at all valuable. So I'd say instead that I stopped. I stopped smoking and took myself away from being controlled by the tobacco industry and gave myself a life, and also ensured that I was a good role model for my children as well. But in doing that, the struggle that I'm sure that I'm not the only member in this House has had of actually having that withdrawal from nicotine is actually an exceptionally difficult thing to do. So when one is going through that particular process, to have to be in an environment where displays of tobacco and advertising of tobacco were constantly in that environment is a very difficult thing to do. So in Clause 7 of Part 1, it takes, of course, a very important step to actually take the display, to actually ban and prohibit the display of tobacco products in our environments that we visit all the time. We visit them when we buy petrol, when we buy milk, going into any environment, any retail environment, that the display of tobacco products has been used by the tobacco industry in lieu of advertising for tobacco products. And I think that came through really loud and clear in the submissions that we've heard on this bill, that it's not just the displaying of goods so people can see where they buy them from. It's actually quite deliberately used as a technique and a tactic to replace tobacco advertising, which of course the Labour government took the leadership on and banned some years ago. And that's the sort of leadership I think that it's really important to continue to see. You know, I think the Labour Party, when it did that, was very bold. It was a very, very bold thing that the Labour Party did, and it took leadership. And I think, Mr Chair, we're about to see that again this week, but I won't talk about that in regard to Part 1 of the Smoke-Free Environments, Controls and Enforcement Amendment Bill. But it does cause me to reflect on how important that bold leadership from the Labour Party has been in terms of changing the environments and the culture that we have around the issue of smoking in this country. And just prior to the dinner break, I was also, and I wish to just, you know, in case people missed that contribution before dinner, to remind them about our colleague Steve Chadwick, who I think, you know, as an individual, took absolute leadership for the betterment of the health of all New Zealanders. And I really want to congratulate her on that, because she was brave, she was bold, and she actually took a lot of personal flack over leading the charge on making smoke-free environments in New Zealand.
I call the honourable member